Alright, so really we're doing this? Most embarrassing moment? Okay. I don't know if this is the most embarrassing, but it's embarrassing. At least it was to me. When I was in 8th grade, I had a crush on this beautiful girl that sat next to me in French class, and I thought I would make my move and tell her how I felt around the holiday season, around Christmas time. So I bought this beautiful Christmas card, and I wrote out my feelings in it, and then I got these candy canes, and I made them in the shape of a heart, and taped them to the card. And right after French class, on the last day of school, before Christmas break, I chased her down and, said, "Oh, before you leave, I have something for you." And I gave her the card, and it was like a very Christmassy card. And she looked at it, and then she said, "I'm Jewish." As if that wasn't embarrassing enough, I felt so awkward I had to get out of the situation, so I tried to make an exit. And I kid you not, I don't know how I did this. To this day, I don't understand it. It defies physics, but I tripped all the way up the stairs. I've seen people trip down the stairs, but I'm probably the first and only person to trip up the stairs repeatedly.
Okay, last year I went skiing with some friends, even though I'm a really bad skier, but I thought it'd be fun. And so I tried to go down a slope that was harder than I was ready for and ended up falling down the slope on my back head first. It wasn't painful, but it was really embarrassing.
I think the worst story in this category, fortunately, didn't happen to me, but to a Catholic priest I know who didn't realize that the sound system was on and his microphone was on, and just before he went out to lead the service, he decided to make a last quick trip to the bathroom. And the entire congregation got treated to the whole thing, right down to the final whoosh. And he only figured out that something was amiss when he walked out into the sanctuary and half the congregation was doubled over laughing and the other half was looking at him in total horror.
So, most embarrassing moment for me was when I was very little. My family took me to visit some distant relatives that I didn't know in a place I didn't know. And as I was playing outside with them, I had to go back into the house for something. And I walked into the wrong house. They looked the same, and I was terrible with directions and things, even now. But I walked into the wrong house as if I owned it, and there are people inside, and I just sauntered through the house as if I belonged there, until they kind of stopped me and asked me "Who are you? What are you doing here?"
Traveling with my family just some years ago, I think sometime after 9/11, I was just wandering off in the airport like I usually do. My mom just yelled, "Jihad!" Everyone just stopped and stared at her.
Okay, two things you need to understand or know to understand my most embarrassing moment is A, I'm a girl, and B, my last name is Uday. One day I was having trouble with my Bank of America account, and I was already in a really bad mood. I'd broken my phone earlier that day, and then my Bank of America account was just going haywire. So I called customer service, had a long conversation with them, presented myself as Mrs. Uday, and just talked to them for a while. And then finally, at the end of the conversation, the woman said, "Unfortunately, I cannot help you, Mr. Udu." And I was really upset because first of all, she called me Mr. Second of all, she called me Udu. So for a while, my sister heard that conversation and she told her friends. So for the past about 2 or 3 months, my sister and all her friends have referred to me as Mr. Udu.
When I was 13 years old, there was a young man in my church who was probably 14, I think. And I had a crush on him. For the longest time. I remember sharing that with a friend of mine, and so for months we were trying to figure out if he had a girlfriend. And so we didn't want to pose a question directly, because that would seem a little bit too forward, that kind of thing. And so for months we came up with a series of questions that we could ask to find out without asking a question directly. And I'm trying to think of now what that question was, but it was sort of to get around the idea of whether or not he had anybody else in his life. And so I posed my question, and I'll never forget his response. "It's for me to know and you to find out."
My most embarrassing moment in life was a long time ago when I was asked to give a speech as part of a speech contest from my school. I was selected by my school to give a speech and prepared for over a week, wrote down my speech, memorized my speech. I was all ready. I got up at the podium with all these people before me, and I literally, after saying, "Ladies and gentlemen," just froze. And for about 5 to 7 minutes, I just stared at the crowd stared at me, and I had nothing to say. And then I just walked off, completely humiliated.